So are we, for the most part, Gentiles, for whom the Christ has come. The church reflected on that for a long time and finally came to call it Epiphany, from a word meaning appearance, the first appearance of Christ to the non-Jewish world. Eastern churches celebrated it first, but now churches all around the world mark it this last Friday, January the 6th, I believe it was. So, the shepherds may have been devout and humble Jews. They rejoiced at the promise of a long-expected Messiah. But Hebrews, these guys were not. That they are part of the Advent story ought to gladden our hearts. So, we love the story because they are seekers and foreigners. And so, a word came forth in Galilee, a word like to a star, it climbed and rang and blessed and burnt wherever brave hearts are. The word came forth, the star came forth, and they came forth. Magi, scientists, astrologers probably, men of mystery who appear for a short time in Matthew's version of the Christmas story, and then they disappear forever. And it is ironic to me that they are now known to human history, not because they were researchers or scientists, but because one day they decided to follow a single star to a wayside Judean village. Sometime within the early months of young Jesus' life, they come to the house of Bethlehem where the Joseph Mary family are staying. They bring some gifts. They worship, it says. They headed back to the east. The gifts. We remember the gifts. Gold and frankincense and myrrh. And by those gifts, those three gifts, we number the Magi 3. That may not be true at all. That could have been 2 or a half dozen or more. Gold was of great value then and now. We're not told how much they brought or what Joseph and Mary did with it, but my hunch is that when Joseph and Mary decided to go home via Egypt, that gold probably came in handy to pay the hotel bills and buy the food and all of that to get home. Frankincense, literally white incense they used over in Jerusalem, about 6 or 7 miles from Bethlehem, in the sacrificial system. People made offerings of frankincense. Myrrh, of course, was a perfume that had a distinct and wonderful aroma. So gold and frankincense and myrrh, valuable gifts, ordinarily. But they do, when you think about it, seem a little bit inappropriate for this occasion. They're not the right gifts for a young child. Babies and young children don't need incense and perfume. They need warm clothes, they need diapers, they need food, they need blankets. So in terms of the gifts they bring, we might label these not the wise men, but the not so wise men. Nor are they very sharp in the way they make their way to Bethlehem and the inquiries they make. They come to Jerusalem to ask about a newborn king of the Jews. And in the capital city like Jerusalem, political news really travels fast. Anybody in Washington will tell you that, or Frankfurt or any other place. So Herod the king picks it up. Now, if you're the reigning king, the one thing you don't want to hear about is the too early arrival of your successor, especially if he's not your kid. Okay? So, Herod never accepted in the hearts of the Jewish people king over Judea simply by permission of Rome. To Herod, this kind of a political rumor is really damaging. And so he's paranoid over his rejection of the people around him. He's intimidated by his Roman bosses. Herod is troubled over the inquiries of these distinguished Eastern visitors. I don't know if these magi knew all of the political rumors and intrigue on this particular journey, but their stop in Jerusalem to even raise all of this stuff, again, might cause us to label them not wise, but not so wise, maybe naive at least, as many grieving Bethlehem mothers would later attest at the killing of their babies. The wise men, the not-so-wise men. Centuries of imagination and story have embellished their story. Henry Van Dyke, you remember, added the other wise man to his story. Giancarlo Minotti's wonderful little opera made them kings and night visitors to a crippled boy named Amal and his brother. So fantasy aside, all of that is fantasy, good story, but the material in Matthew really is pretty scarce about these guys. The truth is, though, it does tell us a couple of very important things about these wise men. And in those things, I think they show themselves to be people of wisdom indeed. Let me just mention them to you quickly. For one thing, these are people who looked at a star, who saw light, and decided to follow. Above all else, these guys are seekers. They were on the road for months, maybe even a year or longer. The essence of faith is that it is a journey. Faith does not have all of the answers at the outset. It doesn't even have all the questions. The quality of faith in any generation is the quality of quest, of discovery, of venture. Now, modern people like us, we really can't fathom exactly why they should start out on such an uncertain journey just because they looked up and saw something unusual in the sky. However, ancient people really believed strongly in astrology. I think it was because the world in which they lived was so uncertain and so unpredictable and so scary at times, people needed something unchanging to steer their lives by. The stars and the planets, such as we know now, those things seem to be fairly constant. And so astrology was pretty important to the people of this particular day. So any change in the patterns that seemed so constant would send up a red flag or offer a sign of hope. At least it would hold significance. We don't know what they saw. We don't know what this particular star was. There was a time when Jupiter and Saturn came together, about 7 BC, it says. The dates are a little imprecise about that. The Egyptians report a star of extraordinary brilliance along about this time. We don't exactly know what it was. But there was in the world of this time a feeling of expectation. Focused, believe it or not, on Judea. I read what Matthew remembers from the prophet. You Bethlehem, the land of Judah, from you will come a great ruler. Well, that wasn't just Jewish tales, okay? There was a sense in the world that things needed to be changed. Over the world of the first century, there hung this heavy sense of expectancy. People were hungry for some fresh personal reality and maybe for their own history to go in some new direction. Theodor Mommsen, the German scholar about Rome, Mommsen said one time about this era, the world was growing old and not even Caesar could make it young again. So when you combine the change in this ordinarily steady and stable constellation above, when you combine that with the heavy expectation among the people of the world, these men decide from the east to go on that long-awaited journey because maybe there might be some way in all of this process to turn the tide of human history. So they saw a star, and they decided to follow. Faith in any generation is a journey. It begins in the suspicion that life, my life, your life, they're more than what our own resources can make up. There is this incompleteness about us as human beings. Every now and then life says to us, you need some higher and better reason to be alive than just breathing in and out. Maybe it comes as a sudden loss in business. Maybe it comes the death of a friend. Maybe it comes the loss of a friendship. Maybe some deep disappointment. Maybe just the boredom of every day. But eventually we suspect that like that ancient mariner out on an uncharted ocean, we need a pole star to steer by in our lives. Like these magi, we need a light to guide us. I hear it not every day, but I hear it often expressed in a lot of different ways, this hunger for a different way. I've decided, some people say that my life is probably more than my job. I don't know what that is, but it's got to be more than just my vocation. Or, it's a crazy world. I need something to hold on to, maybe to pass on to my kids. Or, who knows what to believe anymore? Everything is so relative. But if I could feel the touch of the eternal on my life, I'd go for it. So the light that stood over that house in Bethlehem becomes an option for us. A pole star, a fixed point for our shifting, changing lives. I read about one guy burdened with the woes and disappointments of his life, who said, sometimes I feel like hopping on a jet and just going to South America and starting a whole new life. He said, the problem is, I know I'll still be me when I get off the plane. Well, there was an answer for that need in the house in Bethlehem. Because there began a lifetime of how a human being connected with God can live and thrive. So however dim the light may be for you today for hope, for a new life, a new way of living, follow it to Bethlehem. Whether it's intellectual or emotional or spiritual, follow it to Bethlehem. That's what the Magi did. They saw a light and decided to follow wherever it led. Welcome to faith. Welcome to the journey. They did one other thing, maybe not so obvious. They looked at reality and they saw more. 3 times in this story that I read a moment ago from Matthew, the word worship is used. Some form of worship is used to describe what they did when they got to Bethlehem. Now, the word there is often used to describe reverence for God, of course. But it's also used just to describe paying homage to a king or a monarch. So the question is, what was it for these guys when it says they fell down and worshiped him? I'm going to put my money on the fact that they probably were doing nothing more than paying homage to a future king, a future Judean ruler. But the point is, they saw that, what might be possible in this child, and not just what was obvious. I mean, can you think about it in a wayside village, in a small backwater town, having come out of a manger to a house? That's the obvious. But they saw in the obvious some possibility, something more. The obvious was this: that Bethlehem was blessed. Nothing greater could be heard than a dry wind in the thorn, the cry of one newborn, and cattle in the stall as they stirred. The Magi heard more. In the dry wind of a moment, they heard the unusual, or at least they believed it. You see, faith is also openness to the possibilities of the pilgrimage of every day. Faith is believing that whatever is perceptible to the naked eye, there is a deeper reality at work. Faith is trusting God to see us in the mundane or the difficult, just in the trenches of life. The beyond in the midst of the obvious. But how can you see that? How can you look at the hurt and hunger and injustice of this world and see anything other than hurt and hunger and injustice? Well, I will respond to that by saying another clue is in that word worship itself. It comes from the word worship, which means to come near or to see something at close range. Faith in God is not a detached intellectual journey, okay? Kierkegaard said, I don't know the truth unless it becomes part of me. There comes a point, if I'm going to live by faith, when I throw my life and my lot in with God, a time when I choose to open my life to God, a decision to know God and trust God at close range, if you will. And when I do that, instead of blocking out the pain of the world and the hurt of the world, I'm willing to affirm that God is still at work to heal some of that pain, to deal with some of that injustice, and that God calls me to be God's partner in that process. I ran across a cartoon where one character says, sometimes I want to ask God, why did you allow poverty and famine and injustice when you could do something about it? And his friend said, well, what's stopping you from asking that? And the man said, well, if I do, I'm afraid God might ask me the same question. Sometimes the obvious is far from good, but God is at work, actively present in God's Spirit and with God's people, and that can give direction and hope to our lives. So faith in God is looking into a manger or a house in Bethlehem and seeing not just a newborn child, but the real possibility of change and redemption. Faith is betting my life and my resources on God's ability to renew me and through me and with your help to renew our world. Thomas Carlyle was an old Scottish writer who almost all of his lifetime was having an argument with the established church. And so in one of his stories, Sartor Resartus, he talks about a cynical philosopher who lives in an attic high above the great city. And he looks down into those dark streets and he realizes below him there are at least 500,000 human beings. Some are happy, some are sad, some are dying, some are being born. Some are well, some are sick. Some are cursing, others are praying. And he contemplates all of these heaped and huddled together with nothing but a little masonry and a little carpenter between them. But he looks down on that, the cynical philosopher, and says, I sit above it all. I sit alone with the stars. I'm glad today that the Magi did not sit alone and sit still with their star. It turns out that that star was a light of possibility for those people heaped and huddled together. Because it led them to a God who is not above God, but the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw God. So if you want to call them the not-so-wise men, if you want to track them, maybe their gifts were inappropriate. But what do you give to a baby who has everything? Someday he would want their love, their loyalty. Someday he would want their faith. Did he ever get it from these wise men? We never told. But we're here this morning to celebrate a God who enters history in the back door of Bethlehem, the beyond coming to the obvious. We're here to reaffirm a stubborn belief that God goes on working for God's good purposes in this world, and that we are called to roll up our sleeves and be God's partners. So the Magi saw light, and they followed it. They looked at the obvious and saw more. That is their legacy of faith to us today. That is their legacy of wisdom. And so this morning, this week, this Epiphany season, that's pretty wise. Let's remember it. Let us pray. Well, God, thank you for the story. It is so short, so cryptic, and we're left with mystery surrounding it. But there's enough here to remind us of the nature of faith. Teach us that afresh today, we pray. Embolden us, bind its messages to our hearts and our wills, and grant that we who choose to live by faith may follow the light you give to us every day, wherever it leads. Grant that we too may look at what life is in all of its mundaneness or its excitement and see your hand at work. And most of all, Lord, remind us that we are partners and your helpers. In the strong name of Christ, I